Welcome to Planetary Choices, a podcast produced by Center for New Critical Politics and Governance at Aarhus University. With this podcast, we invite you into our research lab where we explore the key questions of today. We bring together scholars, policymakers, and activists who are engaged in sustainable approaches to planetary stewardship. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to Planetary Choices. Today, our guest is Dagan Cohen. Dagan is the founder and creative director of CHANGENCY, a creative agency for societal change that connects frontrunners in the public and private sectors with artists and designers to collaborate on solutions for urgent social and ecological issues. Dagan is also a leader of the Amsterdam Donut Coalition, an open network of people and organizations who utilize the Doughnut Economics Model of Kate Raworth in Amsterdam and its metropolitan area. Amsterdam is one of the first cities to officially adopt the Doughnut Economics Model as a tool for transformational change. Dagan, welcome to Planetary Choices.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
As always, James is also here. We're co-hosting this, and we're very excited to talk to you. Hi, James.
Hello. Welcome.
Dagan, maybe you could share with us a little bit your background to just get into the topic. So how did you come to develop CHANGENCY?
Well, first of all, I think that the name change and agency, are combined. So you can say our message or our premises is actually in one word, and that name popped up already. I think in 2018 in my mind. That I thought, well, if I were to start a new organization, I would call it CHANGENCY. But what really triggered me to start it was actually one thought that popped into my mind in, I guess, 2023, 2022, which is maybe the biggest crisis of our time is the crisis of imagination. And what I mean is that in these very kind of turbulent and uncertain times where multiple crises collide, we are hardly capable to imagine a hopeful and sustainable future. In fact, we lack a vision of the future we actually want, a future we can all work together towards to. And that trigger, and I've been talking to a lot of people what they see as the biggest crisis, and nobody will say it's the crisis of imagination. But what people do agree on is that in those times of polycrises, a lack of imagination or a hopeful perspective is really lacking. And I have a background in the visual arts, so I was trained as an artist. I studied the Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam, and I especially dove into what was called then kind of environmental art and design. So art for the public spaces and art to kind of challenge people for a reaction. So not in the white temple of the arts like museums. So I was always interested in kind of interacting, creating a space for art for people to respond, to be part of. So I worked as a visual artist for many years, but always not especially, a craftsperson. So I was really kind of educated as a conceptual artist. I did performances, installations, interventions in the public space. Did that for many years and worked together with many other artists and disciplines, with dancers, with other performers. But as an artist, you're always kind of struggling to make a decent living. And in the Netherlands, you can apply for certain subsidies or you may sell something. But if you work conceptually in installation, it's quite hard to sell. Unless you're part of maybe, 10 artists that really can make a proper living out of their work. So you do all kind of odd jobs. And somehow through a project, I got in touch with people from the advertising world that were interested in that concept. And I kind of, not by chance, but also because I was interested in this idea of advertising as a creative way to reach many people. And so I had actually quite a career in the advertising world and worked for many agencies, creative agencies, and especially on the digital domain, but working for big brands, for beers, for insurance company, for banks, and all that. And it was a lot of fun. But I had a certain point after 18 years. I was also creative director of those agencies. But at a certain point, I thought, why am I doing the best I can and gathering creative people around brands and products and services? I don't think that we are better off with having them. And so for me, it was a point that I thought, maybe it's enough. And so I started, and I was then very much interested in, actually, that was in 2012 when I decided to quit my job and become more of an independent entrepreneur and a creative entrepreneur. And I was especially interested in digital culture as, the big social networks started. I felt like, hey, it's not only about the commercial potential of internet and social media, but it's also a huge cultural change, which I called kind of democratizing creativity. All of a sudden, because of higher bandwidth, because of platforms as Facebook and YouTube especially, all of a sudden, a lot of people had access to express themselves creatively. And I saw a huge eruption of creativity coming from all kinds of places, not specifically only the professional creative sector. And I had a startup, or actually two startups related to digital culture. And but as digital culture also became, and YouTube became very commercial, I also felt, wow, the culture is kind of dying, and everything becomes algorithmical driven and commercially utilized. And so I would say that I'm now in my fourth transition as a creative maker or thinker. Art as a first stage and believing in the power of art, then advertising, then digital culture. And now I'm in this stage that I think it's really about creativity for change, and how can the knowledge that I gained and the in communication, in marketing and advertising, and also my network with artists, how can I kind of combine them, and how can I make them to a use of the public service for a more sustainable and fair world. And then I worked for about 7 years for an organization called What Design Can Do, which is an Amsterdam-based international, platform, online and offline, to promote design for change in a way, but kind of really celebrating the designer as initiator. And I worked 7 years. I was the head of R&D, research and development. I ran quite a lot of design challenges, worldwide design challenges around, big societal topics. But after 7 years, maybe 7 years each, it was time to kind of deepen my commitment to the public cause, and decided that, although this organization was really great, it was also, in a way, autonomous. And I thought that collaborating with policymakers, so you can work on really the challenges that are in policy defined as important, that there is goal setting for it, that I kind of should get artists and designers at the table. Because my feeling was that, we're living times of big transitions. Transitions are mostly, when people talk about transitions, it's about technology. The technology that is needed, or the funds, the money that is needed for the energy transition, for the circular transition. And I really felt, hey, it's not just a technological, but it's really a cultural and a social. We need social and cultural innovation. So so we need to have artists and designers involved in really the big policy-led transition pathways. And that's actually the moment that I start CHANGENCY. So it's not something that's only top down. So policy is an important factor, but I think that civil society is a hugely important factor in those transition, and they should be part of the interventions and also the policies, the focus points. So this idea of a collective imagination for change is really at the core of what we do.
That's a really fascinating background. And I think you've really characterized the transition over the last 20, 25 years that we've all experienced, but not at the level that you have. You've actually become an activist within this transition in stages. I'd like to drill down more on your how you organize. You would have what I would call a networked agency.
Mm-hmm.
So then how you must have a core team.
Yeah.
And then I believe you have a foundation board.
Yeah.
And then you have all the partners. Could you speak a little bit about how that's structured and how it actually operates in practice?
Yeah, sure. So, now that CHANGENCY is operating actively for 2 years, I'm also starting to look back now and how our projects start, what is the core, how they start and how we then organize around it. So what I really see now is that we are really focusing on sector-wide transition challenges. So we don't have a client that said, I have a problem. Can you have a kind of a creative solutions for that? Yes, it is based on, let's say, a transition goal, but it's mostly kind of sector-wide, and everything in a way starts with a conversation. So somehow I get into conversation with somebody who's leading a project or a certain mission, and then gradually it kind of develops into a project. But it starts with a conversation mostly about, hey, what do you mean that we need to work with artists and designers? What is then the strategy behind it? So to give you a few examples, we did, 2 quite big projects around the energy transition. And I got in a conversation with the person who led the local energy strategy for the province of North Holland, which is the biggest province. And they, Netherlands has a goal to have, obviously in the transition to completely renewable energy sources, except a goal that in 2030, like 70% of all energy sources need to be renewable, and then in 2050, kind of 100%. What does that mean? Is that every province, or you can say, what you call a province, has, depending on its size and the kind of landscape situation, has a goal to generate a certain amount, a quantum of renewable energy through wind and solar. And so I had with him a conversation about the role of design and creativity in that process. And we did kind of some research, kind of preliminary research that showed that the energy transition is mostly seen as really a technical challenge and a very financial challenge. So how can we generate in a relatively short time so much renewable energy? How are we going to fix this? And if you look then at the kind of how it's perceived, there's a lot of negative sentiment around, was at that time, I'm talking about 2020-21, when we started this conversation, a lot of negative sentiment, which is really around this idea, not in my backyard. I don't want to see wind turbines in my landscape. I don't. They make sound. Maybe it's not good for your health. I don't want to see solar panels on landscapes. So there was kind of, and who is going to pay for it? And am I getting the bill as a citizen? So our entry point was creating a new narrative about energy transition, that it's not only about how are we going to fix it, but hey, we can do it like that. So we combined a lot of questions that people were asking themselves and gave the answer to that from examples in the practice. So we made portraits of all kinds of people who kind of embrace this transition, that have solar panels on the roof of their house. They benefit from a lower energy bill. We showed innovations that were aesthetically much more pleasing. So this result, those conversation about the role of design and communication led to really defining a new narrative, a new story, which was then a campaign that started to be a campaign for North Holland, but it was also a campaign without a, sender or a main client, because we created a kind of a toolkit that everybody could use. And if you have a project that fits in this, as a showcase how it does work and how it's growing in the Netherlands, then you can use our tools. You can make a video. We kind of set it, scripts for videos, templates for all kind of stuff. And it then gradually became a nationwide campaign that was adopted by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate. So it started a conversation. And I also see that a starting point is, for us, a lot of times, is kind of challenging the prevailing narrative. Mm-hmm. And then how you then work towards that new narrative, also kind of defies the cliches, the norm as it is now. It's always through co-creation. But with these professionals involved to steer that co-creation process, to make it into attractive solutions that are appealing, that inspire, that activate. And another recent example, the latest project we did was actually before the summer, in June. And that was a collaboration with the Amsterdam Fashion Institute and the University of Applied Sciences of Amsterdam. And again, this started with a conversation I had with the director of the Amsterdam Fashion Institute, which also started with this nearly one line, which was that I kind of drew from our conversation. And we said, the problem of fashion lies in the words fashion itself, because our urge, our need to be in fashion and to stay in fashion drives a kind of endless cycle of production and consumption. So how can we develop a new narrative that kind of celebrates the value of clothes in our lives, but without you being part of a very destructive industry? And now the project itself was what we call a story lab that took a whole day, going through different phases, which the end result is really fashion future scenarios. But the people involved were people from the whole production and the production cycle of the whole industry. So we had researchers, we had producers, we had farmers, we had designers, we had influencers. And through the network of Amphi, that knows the whole fashion world, I know some people in the fashion world, but obviously they had access to a big network. We had a lot of pioneers involved. So the thing they had in common, that in a way, every one of them were pioneers, but on different scales. We had also big companies like Patagonia and Zeeman, which is very big in the Netherlands, retailers, but everybody that kind of understand, and that's fascinating for me about the fashion world, and from a few years ago already started, I think it's good to work on fashion because, transitions that are really close to your body are very personal. There's nothing more personal like the things that you wear and why you wear them, what you want to express with it, or the things you eat, or the things you surround yourself with. So I feel that it's important to combine it with, in brackets, lifestyle, because that's very close to people. Otherwise, it becomes very abstract. So yeah, well, at the end, what I always strive for is to have an output. That it is the process important, and the process needs to be very inclusive and creative, but the output should be very exciting. And so we have kind of 8 future scenarios now on the table, and now we're looking at the next phase. So how are we going to go doing more story labs throughout the country or in Europe, or are we going to work on some of the most promising scenarios out there?
Let me get in here as with another question for another project. It sounds like, even though we've touched upon many of the questions that we have in mind also as our conversation unfolds, which is participation. Sounds very democratic, engaging the civil society. Even though it sounds also as if you need to have a very peculiar address book so you can call the right people to start the network. So how can that be opened up? I wonder. Once you start the network, and then you need to create the momentum for others to come in. But let me ask you about a specific project that I was found fascinating, which is, as I was preparing here, which is called the Europe Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
There's also How to Like This, or some others, but the Europe Challenge sounds, well, the EU needs to be challenged, and it sounds like many people are rather critical, some are hopeful, some don't care about the EU anymore. Let's just say to challenge Europe is a good idea. What is this all about? How were they created, and what impact did they have?
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you asked that, because it's really one of my favorite projects, and we are a kind of delivery partner, or we do a certain part of that Europe Challenge together with the European Culture Foundation, which is a Amsterdam-based foundation but works Europe-wide. They exist 50 years. They were set up to kind of invoke a positive sentiment about Europe and being part of Europe. That's why they started through culture and art, try to get a sense of involvement and a sense of belonging for people living in Europe. So this specific project is aimed at libraries, and they pose the questions to European library. It's an open call. That's why it's called the Europe Challenge. It's an open call aimed at libraries and their local communities. So to come up with an initiative, a plan that they want to execute in their library, and has also the potential to be maybe replicated elsewhere in other libraries, to tackle a local challenge that's specifically for the area which the library is based. Why did the European Cultural Foundation chose libraries as a domain to work with, or to look at developing further? Because they have one thing in common. There are public spaces that you can enter for free. If you want to lend a book or a DVD or whatever, you pay a subscription. But as a space, it's an open space. And in countries in where also democracy is under pressure, it's one of the few places that it kind of is a safe space. So the main goal of this challenge is to kind of foster libraries as democratic places, and to see how they can be a place for communities, maybe different communities, to gather around, to feel safe and free to be themselves. So it's really about ideas to utilize the library as a So it's not all about books. Yeah, it's a place of knowledge, but it's really much more about the space, the open space of the library, open for everyone to gather and come together, and plans for that. So we're now, next week I have the kickoff of the third edition of this Europe Challenge, and it's now even bigger. So there are now 60 libraries involved. They have been selected. So there was an open call, and as the project, there was a pilot first of 9 libraries. Then there was a challenge, the first one that we got involved with 32. Last year it was 52, and now it's 60 libraries. And really, from big libraries, in Berlin, to a very small libraries in rural villages of Spain, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, so they apply for this challenge. They receive a fund through the European Cultural Foundation of €10,000 per project, and then they get support in developing the idea from different experts and disciplines. And we, as CHANGENCY and myself, are kind of a main facilitator for that part. We do 3 modules. One is about prototyping, so how to make your initiative tangible. What's the methodology of a proven yet exciting way to do prototyping, testing, validating, etc. That's one module. The other one is about storytelling, and really getting your idea across in a compelling way through writing a manifesto, through working on a communication strategy, but also visualizations. And for instance, one of the things that we did last year, and we're doing again, is that we also have a masterclass on AI visualization, because most people do not have the means to hire a professional designer or photographer, but with the right guidance, they can still make quite good, visual, compelling images of their initiative in AI. So we have a really very experienced AI artist working on that. And the last module we do is about pitching. So, but we do that with a very experienced pitch coach organization. So it's really people to not only write and visualize it, but to feel comfortable in their bodies, standing on the stage and present their idea. So, to deliver their ultimate 3-minute pitch. So this is our role, and there are some other experts on other subjects.
I think you've just outlined an example of what you've become pretty well known for, which is your innovative social designs. So I would expect that many of our viewers would understand that you're a person who has started out in the visual arts and doing networking to make social commentary and also improve society through betterment. But you've begun to theorize about it, but also apply the active work that you're doing to build that out. And it's really very, very interesting. I was reading some background about you that you have talked about scaled public communications and movement branding and some of these kinds of ideas. Could you just comment on that a little bit about how you have transformed your vision of the arts and communications into something even larger than that is actually working in the social space?
Yeah, I think, when I went to the art school, I wanted to become a painter, and a famous painter. But then even the first year, went to this quite, Rietveld Academy is known for its quite activistic and radical, really radical and forward approach. And as I started there, painting was declared dead. They said painting, Jesus, I mean, that's so old-fashioned. Because there was a whole array of new instruments at your disposal as an artist, video, photography, land art, performance art. And instead of saying, oh shit, the thing that was proud to be or wanted to be is kind of suppressed. I immediately embraced that change. So I think that embracing change has been a kind of a red line walking through everything I do. But to kind of react on your comment is, the artistic genius is mostly seen as this hyper individual with capabilities and talent and perseverance and having, selling your art because it's your signature, you are the artist. Then you come into the commercial world or you are paid very handsomely because everything you make is owned by the brand, the company. Then even in the design world, communication design, especially, you have a union for graphic designers will protect the intellectual intellectual rights of for instance, the graphic designer or everything that he designed for a brand. Now we have also the rise of Creative Commons and open source. So I changed my mind on that, and that's why CHANGENCY is a foundation. Therefore, I found myself and people I work with very much more open in creating methods, toolkits, visual languages that are in a way open to be adapted by others. And I think this development is now really important, because if you want to empower change, you need to be redistributing those means and not claim it and ask money for it. Of course, you need money to develop something. You might ask money to guide people through it, which is, also in the open source world and open source software, it can be free, but the consultancy or the advice to implement things, that can be paid for. That is fair. So I think that everybody that is, really interested in creating a bigger movement, it's always has to be distributed. It has to be distributed over many people that can be part of it, that contribute to it, adapt it, etc. So from being egocentric, I guess I became more ecocentric and all about it sounds corny about sharing, but I really mean is that what you have to offer, do that for the public good. And
that sounds good to me. I mean, so that's a great conviction to have. Maybe more should have it. Let's get to the donut, shall we, Dagan?
Yeah.
So
sure.
This, all of this fascinating background and all of your experience and knowledge now, you also apply it to donut economics somehow, or to the donut model and how to live it and implement it in Amsterdam. So within the ecological limits of a big city. So could you describe to us and to our listeners and viewers, to our audience, how this model is used in Amsterdam, more in broad strokes, housing, health, education, or in how you come to live with it, how you embrace it with your special approach to things?
That's sometimes I have to explain how it comes that I kind of leading two organizations at the same time, but there's such a great interconnection. First of all, what got me excited about donut economics was when I was introduced to Kate in 2018.
To what? Sorry.
To Kate Raworth. I was introduced to Kate Raworth in 2018 because she was having an event in Amsterdam, a workshop. I had in the same space a kind of pitch presentation, kind of facilitating pitch presentations of winners of one of the challenges I did. And we were introduced by a mutual friend, and somebody already said, Dagan, you should meet Kate sometime. And so by chance, we were in the same space. We both finished our, workshops or events. And we just met and we were talking an hour long about imagination and about design. And I said to her, that the reason that I, was triggered by the donut model, because it's based on a visual. There's this one image, this one symbol.
Yes.
That says it all. And if you, and it sounds simple, the donut, but if you will go through Google image search and you type in economy, what you will get, the image you will get all over the place is one graph, which is an arrow going up with sometimes kind of a bump in it, because, that kind of ingrains the economy in growth. So if you look comic books, you see a presentation, a graph in a comic book or a movie, there is somebody pointing at a visual of this arrow going up. So that is the cliche. And that's the cliche. It's not even a cliche. It's so ingrained in our culture how we look at economy. If you don't have growth, you're actually not doing well. You will go down. And so she challenged that model and came up with a new one. So, we had a conversation about redesigning things. And so she really used the word design a lot, in fact. And hopefully your listeners and your viewers know that the donut stands for the outer ring. It's about the ecological ceiling. So we should not overshoot, our planetary boundary. So the planetary boundaries is the outer circle, and current economic activities are about exploiting natural resources, polluting air, land, and water. And so that's the ecological boundaries. The inner circle stands for the social foundation. So nobody should fall in the hole. And the social foundation is very close to human rights, the right that every person has to education or access to education, to clean water, to proper housing, to a decent income. So it's not something that was invented by Kate. Kate combined the ecological ceiling, or the planetary boundaries were already, you probably know the name of Rockström, who was the first one to identify those 9 planetary boundaries. And we have this firmly idea about, social justice and social foundation. And she combined the two, made a synthesis of that. So in its simplicity, it's very imaginative as well.
Could you comment on how donut economics has led to policy action and urban planning and community innovation in Amsterdam and the metropolitan area?
So the original book was published in English in 2017. In 2018, it was translated in many countries, and Amsterdam was one of the first countries to completely fall in love with this book. It appealed to kind of the innovative, creative, innovative spirit of the city. And 2 things started at the same time. So we had from civic society, but knowledge institutes, people in neighborhoods were kind of interested in it, and were trying to figure out how does it then work in practice? How do we work towards these neighborhoods that are inspired by the donut, that are social and ecological safe? At the same time, we had and at that time, Amsterdam Donut Coalition started. So it started in end of 2019 as a bottom-up movement, connecting all the people who were inspired, were interested, wanted to meet each other, exchange ideas, exchange maybe first plans and work towards put it in practice. So that was one movement, bottom up. And that was the Amsterdam Donut Coalition, which really had already, in early March 2020, already had a platform in place, many members, a lot of online meetings because it was Corona, so we could not meet each other live. So there were already like nearly 1,000 people kind of being involved in this movement. At the same time, we had at the city of Amsterdam, where the elder woman from the Department of Space and Sustainability, as it's called in Dutch, the Dutch translation for it. And she was from the Green Party, and she also read that book, and she thought, can we use this model as basis for our circular strategy? And then she invited Kate to talk about it, and other people got involved, the circular economy as a consultancy, but also biomimicry, to make a city portrait. So how does Amsterdam as a city perform, you might say, against those ecological, 9 ecological indicators? Where does it overshoot? Where is there a shortfall on the social foundation? Basically, make an analysis. They call it a city portrait or a city selfie. And it was quite a project. Worked a long time on that. So, you know, the donuts visual with the overshoot and the shortfall, there is one, the one in the book is a global one. And obviously it's being updated all the time. But you can make it also on the city level. And we also, you know, with the Amsterdam Donut Coalition, also sometimes do it on a neighborhood level to kind of put a neighborhood in how it performs against those indicators. So that was really a big project. Said, okay, we want to use that as a basis for circular strategy. The first city portrait was made, and she was really actively pushing it towards circular building, land use, and all that. So it became popular. At the same time, you know, the donut economy is about 3 things. It's about circularity, it's about economy, and it's about social justice. Ideally, if you want it implemented in a city as an integrated approach, as the donut model is a holistic, integrated approach, that's very hard because, you know, every city has its own departments, they have their own goals, and it's very hard to get a consensus on all those 3. But as a starting point, to put that as a basis, as a foundation for the circular strategy, that went very well. And as you know, Amsterdam was one of the first cities to really, I wouldn't say implement it, but work with it on a policy level. But funnily enough, or you know, as it happens, at that time the Amsterdam Donut Coalition did not have a close working relationship with the municipality. So where we knew of each other, it was that some civil servants were also on a personal basis part of the Amsterdam Donut Coalition, attended our meetings, made a profile on the website, but there was no structural collaboration between the Donut Coalition and the municipality of Amsterdam. Our collaboration started when we initiated a yearly festival, the Amsterdam Donut Days, which we started in 2021, and then since then did every year, and that because as a festival you showcase what's happening in the city, and you show it widely, what is happening in neighborhoods, what is happening, you know, in the University of Applied Arts of Sciences, what's happening in the municipality. So we would offer everybody a stage. We had, you know, pitch presentations, we had workshops, and then slowly the municipality got involved by, you know, sponsoring this festival. And gradually, they really became a full partner, supporting us also financially. And the roots, the collaboration between the Amsterdam Donut Coalition and University of Applied Arts was right from the start. Actually, the launch of the Amsterdam Donut Coalition was on the premises of the Amsterdam University of Applied Arts. And there's an extra reason for that, because since Kate Raworth is a professor of practice at that university, has been from 21 until this year. This is her last year of her tenure. And so that collaboration, so you can say, hey, we now have actually the ideal, we have civil society, let's say the community-based initiative that as Amsterdam Donut Coalition, our main goal is really to strengthen the position and the network of those local civics initiatives. Then we have the University of Applied Sciences very much involved. They have a center of expertise, which is called CET, Center of Economic Transformation. So it's they have their own professors. They develop strategies on economic transformation. And last year, they also started a master of economic transformation. So it's really embedded now in education. And then the third, having the municipality as a player really involved, makes it kind of the perfect triangle. And then, of course, if you look at the triple helix or the quadruple helix that you want to call it, we also work with companies and try to do, inspire companies to look at the way their business is organized through the lens of the donut and through regenerative and distributive concepts. So after 5 years, this is the first year, we're celebrating our first year's anniversary this year as the Amsterdam Donut Coalition. And now it's really getting mature because of the partnerships we have citywide.
That's true. That's very impressive, and it gets we will follow it as well. I started to also make give students the task to research this, and particularly when we talk about planetary ideas, sometimes they sound a little abstract, but then I can always say, look at Amsterdam, they're doing it, and then you can study it. I'd like to ask you a question about these democratic bottom-up qualities that you talked about. I'd like to call them democratic, maybe. When then you describe, you have so many members and you have more and more, you gain traction, you gain partners on the public front who also fund you, and companies. But I'd be interested in, is anybody capturing your projects, or does anybody come with projects to you that are not thought out by you or by the coalition center, so to say? Have these ideas sprawled? People come, hey, I'd like to do that, and then they just are also part of that coalition. So can they come to you with their own ideas?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had this long discussion a couple of years ago. How do we define a donut initiative? What is a donut project or a donut initiative? So in the beginning, we said, basically, if it has touches one ecological problem and one social problem at the same time, you can already talk about a donut project, a donut initiative. So if it's only, let's say, only a sustainable project, but doesn't have any social implications or does not organize ownership in a different way or doesn't look at social benefit, it won't really fit. So we need to touch the social and the ecological part. So we sometimes say that a donut initiative can be inspired by donut economics, but it may also be that they don't even know that the donut exists, but fit perfectly because in a natural way, they already tackle social and sustainable issues, which, by the way, happens a lot. So you can say that if you live in these times and you want to mean something for your neighborhood, you will think about both. How get to people involved, how to make people part of it, how to make people, co-owner of it. So it feels natural that especially on a community level, people approach things like that. It's the challenge is more, even companies, try really understand that, and especially they have to report to the CSRDs and ECGs, ESGs, that they have to report on their social and their ecological performance. Until now, it's been quite a challenge for policymakers, for municipalities or for countries that they have those silos, and so they have to organize themselves different in order to tackle things in an integrated way. But also that sense that we need subsidy measures, we need to have a platform, let's say. Conversation between different departments about an integrated approach to those challenges, and kind of mutual goal setting instead of everybody only working on their own challenge. So as we develop and we are doing active, so one of our main programs at the moment are called Living Labs, and we bring. It's a program in which we bring about 8 initiatives, place-based initiatives. So our only demand is that initiative has a spot in the city which they interact with people. So it can be a house, it can be a garden. So local initiative in different neighborhoods. We invite 8 of them to kind of share their experience together, kind of peer learning. What are the practices that have been successful and other can adapt, or where is there a problem that maybe another one can fix? At the same time, we work with them through deep design of the Donut model to analyze the organization. So what is the purpose? How does the network look like? How are they financed? By whom? Yeah, and whether it's about food, so we have food cooperative or food initiatives. We can have, let's say, living cooperatives or housing cooperatives. So what you see now is that undercurrent that is now really coming up is the cooperative approach. Many energy cooperatives, of course, but also farmers, agricultural cooperative, care cooperatives. And the buzzword now coming up in Amsterdam is really translated, which feeds in the donut, is community economy, gemeenschapseconomie. So how can the economy not only how can we make an economy that community is part owner of it? Jason Hickel wrote in his book Less is More. The thing that struck me the most about his book, which is a fantastic analysis of on the history of capitalism and how is it tied into colonialism, but his main strong point, he said, in most of the Western countries, we live in a political democracy, but not an economic democracy, because companies are organized autocratically, and by shareholders, there is no influence of you can influence by buying or not buying stuff, but you do not get to decide which services or products you actually want and need, and have a say in that. So I think the big revolution will be, and ultimately, to have a cooperative economy. And that's the future vision I think a lot of us share at the moment.
I recognize that you don't personally measure the planetary boundaries and ecological overreach, but Could you comment on how the those who do measure the planetary boundaries are working kind of on the side of the metrics, but the community is actually providing the intuitive understanding of how to stay within the planetary boundaries and prevent the overreach? Do you have any particular insights around that?
Well, I can say a couple of things about that. So if you look at the classic, if you want to measure the overshoot and the shortfall based on the donut model, you can do so. You can do that on a city level, which was, let's say, this first city portrait tried as much as data was available to see how on what levels there was an overshoot in Amsterdam and where there was a shortfall. One of the things that they did discover, though, is that this requires some kind of dashboard to be in place in order to monitor these developments, or at least, let's say, measure it again in 5 years. So in the municipality, there was the initiative to do the city portrait again after 5 years. So this year, but it was not approved partly because that the efforts it cost to monitor that, and especially to create data points of the things that you do not have data about. So first of all, you have to monitor what is in place, then you have to integrate systems, and then you have to set up data warehouses or data entry points of those indicators you do not have information. So the question is that the most valuable thing to do? So on a global level, there are many scientists looking on those, the SDGs look at that, the UN Habitat, the UNFCCC is measuring this. On a scientific level, it's done. But on a local level, I think that the effort is so big that you can wonder whether that's worth the investment and the time, or that you look much more on the inside of the donut, that I'm also kind of much more in favor of being regenerative and distributive by design. What are we doing as a city to promote regenerative practices in the city? What are we doing to divide the fruits of society, to make that more distributive? I think, and to measure that and how you perform against that. So what we do see, what we are working on, is what is the impact of those neighborhood and civic initiatives. At the moment, the municipality of Amsterdam is working on developing what is called a value compass, which is to measure the value of societal initiatives in neighborhoods, in districts, to do that together with them. Also not saying, okay, we talked to a lot of experts and we decided this is the measure, the metrics that we're going to use. So it was co-created with a lot of other initiatives, and it's a kind of now in a kind of a concept phase, not even a prototype, but in a concept phase. And that's really looking at measuring the value those initiatives add to the city, and how is that placed in comparison to the city instruments themselves. So just to give an example, one of the things we kind of found out or are seeing more and more happening is that local initiative, neighborhood initiative, kind of jump in the hole that is left by companies and by the municipality. So to give an example, Amsterdam is very advanced in collecting waste, and especially general waste. So, in waste handling, our waste handling system and recycling of that is very advanced. you don't even have to separate plastics from your litter anymore, because through intelligent cameras at the plants, they can sort all the plastics out. So it's very advanced in that sense. For instance, what they do not collect fruit and vegetable waste, so food waste, do not collect collectively. So what happens is that we know of a fantastic initiative which is called From Waste to Harvest, that they collect on a neighborhood level vegetable, food, especially fruit and vegetable waste, and use that as compost for gardens and communal parks, in which then greens, vegetables are grown, which are then sold. This is a service that is now being kind of replicated in different cities by this organization, and they do so because the municipality doesn't. So then you have this idea, and what is much more acknowledged now is that we need those local infrastructure to complement what the city is doing, because the city can't do everything. And I think in our previous kind of first conversation, we also talked about kind of a decline in the trust of government worldwide, and also in the Netherlands. After the bank crisis 2008, we did not trust banks, and now so many scandals with IT systems, for instance, in the government, damaging lives of people, and Corona. There is kind of distrust of government. So who do you actually trust? Yeah, call the Ghostbusters today. Who do you call? Is the community, because on community you can trust your neighbors, you can lend and use things from them. So there's this idea is that, hey, we need a community as a base of trust in society as a whole during the current developments. But we are in the early stage of measuring the value and the contribution of those initiatives to the city.
I'd like to follow that. That's again, all of your answers lead to fascinating examples and illustrations of how these ideas kind of mushroom on their own, or are picked up by government agencies, companies, more citizen organizations. That's great. I'd like to have a follow-up question about the politics of it. In terms of party politics, you mentioned someone from the Green Party earlier in the communication in our talk here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a natural. Kind of color party to talked about it. And I was wondering whether all of these donut days and these great initiatives, whether they are picked up by other parties as well, and whether this has any more political, let's say, stickiness. And in this, what I mean? It's picked up by other parties. Is it an initiative? Are the coalitions forming? Or is the political party discourse, how are they acting? If you go through the portfolio of the many Dutch parties, where do you see you have allies or overlaps, or people see they may be free riders on these ideas? Maybe some right-wing party picks up on it, or I don't know. I'd be interested in it because it's a popular success.
Yeah. At the moment, Amsterdam has always been a very progressive city politically. So we always had the Labour Party and the Green Party leading it, and in coalition that are mostly progressive. I'm completely in favor of trying to work on a basis to involve more political parties. The pathway towards that are in a way slippery, or are sometimes difficult. First of all, the national government, the last one, we have a non-functional government at the moment. Many crises. It was a very right-wing government, but it was the most dysfunctional government we had since the war. Really terrible. Everybody agrees on it. We're having elections in October. We'll probably go more towards a middle kind of a political balance, as it seems. But to give you an example, the current Minister of Economic Affairs is called Minister of Economic Affairs and Green Growth. That's the name, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Green Growth. So the green growth, as being a progressive model, is, let's say, more at the liberal parties and a bit more towards the right, is something they can kind of embrace. Yes, of course, we need to move away from fossil energy, go to more a green economy, but obviously this green economy offers huge opportunities for companies, etc. But we also know that green growth is a myth. It's a beautiful frame. You can't be against it. Green, and the same time, will grow. You know, Kate has a whole shtick about that, which is it's called the decoupling strategy. It is, in fact, scientifically impossible. Still, there's a group of people who believes in green growth. It is for a lot of others in the more liberal and more the right side of politics. Donut economics is too radical. You know, donut what? You know, what is donut economics? You have to explain it. First of all, you have to explain it. Secondly, they think it's too radical. Obviously, it is idealistic. It is a kind of ideal vision of the future. And you can work towards it. You might never get into the donut completely, but this kind of raising the bar in order to kind of have this lightning rod to follow, it's for them it's too idealistic. So, and they're also very much skeptical economy specialists that say it's too idealistic, it's too radical. They prefer, there is much more consensus on broad prosperity theory, the approach of broad prosperity, which has notions of the donut in it. But I think there is one way in, but you know, I'm not sure if I want to get into the lobby towards the politics in the Netherlands as a whole. But a while ago, a couple of months ago, I had a conversation with the, let's say, the chairwoman of the Green Party and the Socialist, you know, collaboration in the Socialist Party in the province of North Holland.
Dagan, sorry, but when you have a conversation with someone, we learned earlier, that's the beginning of something beautiful. So,
oh yeah, you're damn right. Indeed, she told me something that I found fascinating. She was in a coalition, which is not completely progressive at all. They have the Farmers Party, which just says, do not touch the farmers, do not take away the land, do not kind of make the cattle, size of the cattle smaller. You should help them, you should subsidize them. It's a big lobby for the big agricultural sector. They are big in the province of North Holland, but also the more right-wing Liberal Party. She said, well, I'm inspired by the donut. I would like to look at how donut economics on a province level can work. But it's hard because, you know, I am enthusiastic, but, you know, BBB and the others, the Liberal Party, are not enthusiastic. They agree, however, on one thing, which is the power of community, because small businesses are part of the community. Small farmers they are in the fabric. So you need this, you know, the community, power of the community. So I think the way in is kind of, if you are able to show what the power of the community is and that we need them, that's the way of getting the let's say, the values of the donut economy on a broader political level implemented. And I think this will be kind of the movement. You see more and more people, kind of politicians, putting their trust in initiatives and the power of community. Because they feel themselves partly, and they know they can't do it alone. You know, that's typical Dutch. We need to do everything together. Yeah, sure. And then you need the community and community initiatives.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you, do you think there's a role for participatory citizens' assemblies to supplement what some of the parties might be thinking? In other words, beyond the parties themselves, how can citizens themselves organize to carry out a lot of these strategies?
Very good points. I'm absolutely in favor of citizens' assemblies, and also on a global level. And I know that a lot of efforts have been made towards that goal, even with the COP, the yearly COP, the conference of the parties around climate. There are quite a lot of citizens' assemblies around specific the climate issues and problems and potential solutions. There is a big organization in the Netherlands which is called Bureau Citizen Assembly, which promote the use of citizen assemblies. There are a lot of, on the municipal level, there was recently a citizen assembly around waste and litter in the city. I think, I'm very in favor of that system. The catch is only, when do you get a government that really is willing and is committed to execute the most important solutions that come out of the assemblies, and not say, hey, that's a great idea, well, thank you very much. And I think I'm not an expert on that level, so it's for me hard to really be precise on it, but that's the main issue. So what is the level of commitment of government to carry out citizens' assemblies conclusions? And how is the COP? Will they do that? There will be another big global assembly at the next COP. But yeah, it's a subject all by itself, and we have quite a lot of experts on that level. But it's a good reminder also for me to also reach out to them and look how we can combine that with the existing initiatives that we have in our network, and how can we organize citizen assembly around that.
I just looked at the time, and I'm afraid we're overshooting. We're overshooting our temporal boundaries.
Oh shit! And so which indicates are we?
This is a whole different conversation, and I'd love to go on with you about talk, because James has a lot to say about this as well. And we will be back with another podcast, maybe even on that. But for today, I'd like to close this conversation with you, and thank you so much for sharing your effervescent creativity and all these great projects that you're involved in. And I've taken away a lot of things, not least that community economics seems to be a small, little granular part from where things can grow, even across party lines, even across party, seemingly entrenched party camps. That's what I take from it, among many, many other things.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Planetary Choices. This podcast is produced by the Center for New Critical Politics and Governance at Aarhus University. Visit our website and join us for another episode of Planetary Choices.
So bravo to your great work, and keep it up. Wow. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.